Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're coming from. As always, I'll check in and say hi, let me know your name and where you're coming from. And I am always excited, but I couldn't be more excited than today because today it's finally here. It's the launch of my book, From Conflict to Courage. There it is. And today is the day that it gets published. So if you ordered in advance, thank you so much. That counts. And if you ordered in advance, it'll be coming today, tomorrow, or Friday. If you order today, it'll probably come today, tomorrow, today, tomorrow, or Friday also. So I'm very excited. This has been well over a year's worth of work. It started during COVID, and I've got some. Oh, thank you so much. A LinkedIn user says it was worth the wait. I hope that it's worth the wait for you. I want this, even this overview today, to be really content rich and lay the tracks for you before you start reading the book or listening to the book. I actually got to do the recording myself this time, so I'm really excited about that. It's a lot harder than it looks, I can tell you that. So I'm going to check in real quick, then I'll give you kind of the overview of where we're going today. Got someone, hi, Bader from Saudi Arabia. And Forrester, thank you so much for sharing. Carrie, thank you for being here from Indiana. Michelle Lawrence, hi there. I got someone that just says LinkedIn user, a couple of those. So I don't know why that happens. Maybe you don't follow me and that's why, I'm not sure. But here's what we're going to do today. I want to give you some core concepts of the book and kind of how the book came about. And then whenever you get ready to read it or you're in a book club, it's going to make so much more sense because I've found that if you can lay some tracks in advance, it's just juicier and you don't miss things. And so this started out during COVID. I got this idea that maybe I could just use my time putting together a proposal, because you can't get a book anymore without a book proposal unless you self-publish. And so my proposal was about difficult conversations, because I've been training leadership development on that for a long time with organizations, associations. It's one of my highest priced training and development programs. So I wanted a book on that because so many people said, I wish that I had that all in writing. Well, as it turned out, I got an opportunity for a much bigger book on conflict, which made me dig deep. And I always say you teach what you need to learn. So this has really challenged me to live the concepts and to be able to receive and research and come up with a philosophy that I hope is so practical for you to use in your everyday life or in your leadership journey, because to me, we're leading somewhere, whether we have a formal title or not. So what happened was difficult conversations became a whole chapter in the book instead of a book itself. And it was the audience part of you helped to pick the title. I was going to call it Building Conflict Capacity because I thought it sounded more educational and more important. And people that know my work and love my work suggested From Conflict to Courage, how to stop avoiding and start leading. So here it is after all this time. Hi there, Omkar. We talk all the time. That's a follower I really appreciate. I don't know how to pronounce that, but from Toronto, thank you. Hey, Lisa, we just talked the other day. So glad you're here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and you know that I always try to bring some visuals too, I'm going to give you some core concepts of the book. So what I kept seeing was this pattern of avoidance, and that became some of my work on difficult conversations. And then I started to ask myself, what's the reason for this avoidance? And I came up with this understanding at first that the reason for avoidance was because people didn't have the skill sets. And there's truth in that. And a lot of organizations do develop what they call soft skills, or the skill sets and the tools. But then what I found is that sometimes that doesn't stick, and there's reasons why that doesn't stick, which I'll talk about in a minute. But what I've learned is that part of the challenge is courage, having the courage to get past your fear of, what if I say it wrong? What if I hurt their feelings? What if I lose my temper? Every single one of us have these issues when it comes to something that's important to us. And just because something's not scary for you doesn't mean that it's not scary for me, and vice versa. So we have to get out of the judgment and stop saying, well, that's simple, that's easy. If it's hard for you, it's hard for you. So I'm coming from that place. And I'm sharing concepts that have helped me tremendously and many of my clients. And I have this philosophy that if I have a problem, there must be millions of other people that also have the problem. And it just takes courage to bring it forward instead of trying to prove how smart you are or to be the sage on the stage. So that was the purpose in writing this book. So one of the core concepts of this book is that conflict, although we often see it as a problem, conflict itself is not the problem. Now, with that said, I don't say things like embrace it, which you can. But even if we say that, we don't embrace it when it really is outside of our comfort zone. There's nobody that embraces anything way outside of their comfort zone. So I don't say embrace it, but face it. So if you've got the tools and you've got the inner game, you've got the awareness, you can deal with your conflict. So conflict is not the problem. And I've got a little piece here I want to show you. Conflict is not the problem. Here's the little mismanagement is the problem. So the question I often ask is there an elephant in the room? Most of us have some elephants in the room and some skeletons in the closet. That's the reality of the human experience. And so if you're not listening, if you're not seeing, if you're not speaking about the problem doesn't go away. And so mismanagement is really part of the problem. So that's the first concept, is that conflict itself is not a problem. It's the mismanagement of conflict that's the problem. And so one of the ways that we mismanage conflict is, first of all, by the way we interpret it, by the story we tell ourselves. We say, oh, they just want to be right, or if I lose this one, it's going to really look bad, or they're a bully, or I've got to win. And the way the dictionary defines conflict is like crisis and war and battle. So when we define it differently and take personality out of it, and we simply see it as opposing drives, desires, and demands, and those of you that know my work, two arrows going in opposite directions, excuse me. And so when we just say, well, right now there's this conflict because there's an opposing desire, drive, or demand, I can quit making up a story about someone's motive or even having that battle within myself. I jokingly say I can have a conflict without anyone else in the room. And I'm sure you're the same. It's should I, shouldn't I? But if I do this, then that. It's that monkey mind. So we have to understand that conflict isn't really the problem. It's the way we manage it, it's the way we interpret it. And so one of those problems that I see a lot, and I address this very deeply in the book, is what I call the lack of leadership clarity. And those of you that do know my work, you know that I talk about the boat, the island, and the shark. And I'm still using that concept of clarity, but I'm taking it a deeper dive into leadership clarity. And leadership clarity, I'm giving you a formula in the book so that before you start an initiative, before you create a new role, before you call a consultant, before you put together a training program, look at leadership clarity and use that formula so that you can understand, fully understand, and agree with the situation, which is normally the problem that you're trying to address, the outcome, where you're trying to go, and the real or perceived obstacles. So there's a real good definition of how to achieve that, because I believe that clarity can change any situation. And most of the time, we try to solve a problem before we've adequately described the problem. So that's one of the ways we mismanage conflict. Another thing that we do as leaders that I've seen a lot of, and I've done some of these things myself, not moving people to another department, but just justifying why I'm not talking about something that I need to talk about. Well, it's only going to last another 2 months. I don't need to worry about it. Translated into they're going to retire in 2 years, or I'm going to move them to this promoted position because then they won't be working with other people. But the truth is, that's like clipping off the bloom of a dandelion in a field. The next year it grows thicker and thicker, and you just get more dandelions. So we don't want to nip drama in the bud. We want to pull it out by the roots. So I'm sharing how to do that in the leadership clarity piece and in understanding that it's mismanagement that is the problem. Now, the behaviors that I bring up, this is part of the philosophy too, is that you'll see the behaviors, the leadership behaviors that contribute to mismanagement in the 3 A's, and that is avoiding, appeasing, and aggression. This has caused quite a stir, I think, because I'm saying that in my body of work, I'm saying that it's all avoidance. Appeasing is avoidance. It's just the method of avoidance I'm using, which is, you know what, great idea. That's a great idea. I'm so glad you're participating. I'm so glad you're engaged. Appeasing is I agree when I don't really. It's smiling and laughing at a joke that I don't think is funny, that I actually think is offensive. That's how we start to mismanage conflict, either individually or as a leader. And then, of course, there's aggression. And I find this one to be really interesting because a lot of people, especially new leaders, whenever they get their new job, sometimes they resort to aggression. Like, I'm the boss, my way or the highway, didn't ask you to work here. What I say goes. But aggression is still avoidance. It's avoidance of personal growth. It's avoidance of vulnerability, asking for what you want. So these are just reactions and behaviors that we have when we're not adequately equipped to deal with conflict. I'm going to look in here and see if there's any comments. And as you know, this is like being the guy on the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. You have to click over and look at comments and then click back, and it can be quite overwhelming if you're not a multitasker. Hi there. Oh, you joined late. Well, you know what? The good news is this is recorded, so no worries. This is here for you. You join when you can and watch when you can. Hi, Stacy from Missouri. Hi, Leah. Thank you for being here. I hope I'm pronouncing right. And from Poland. Gosh, this is so awesome. So glad to have all of you. Keep showing up and letting me know where you're from, everybody, because I will go back in later and address issues and comments if you have them. So let's go to, so the first concept is that conflict is not the problem, it's mismanagement. That's the problem. And there's lots of ways we mismanage in the way that we define it, the way that we show up, our lack of clarity. There's no judgment around this either. This is just awareness. So once you realize this, you say, okay, I don't have to be so fearful of conflict. It's a weird feeling, but I can work with that. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So the second concept I want to share with you today is that today's leader needs to develop what I call conflict capacity. I just had a user of LinkedIn. I just got through with my fifth LinkedIn learning program, and it's called How Leaders Drive Results and Manage Conflict in a Hybrid Workplace. And one of the people that watched it said that literally changed my ideas of conflict. And I said, how so? How so? Because he said, I've never heard of conflict capacity. He or she, whoever it was that said this, said, I've never heard of conflict capacity, the inner game, the outer game, and the culture. That is the components of conflict capacity, expanding yourself. We don't get better by avoiding, and we may not even get better by embracing. We have to understand what it's made up of so that we can expand, and we have to understand the part that we can own and the part that we may have to make choices about, which is the culture. So I'm going to show you a little slide again. Um, I bring these little banners because I think it helps me whenever I'm doing something and want to understand the concept better. So this is the way that I position this in the book, and it's called the inner game, the outer game, and the culture. And then, as you see in the middle, and I'm sorry from UK Bedford, I'll get rid of your little piece here in a moment. Let's see if I can get rid of that. Okay, there. Oops, sorry. There we go. So there's three components, and we're going to talk about inner game and outer game. But I want to say this. If you are hired as a change agent, and let's say you're not at the very top level, but you are going to be working with people in the culture of an organization to change or shift the culture in some way, what I have learned in my years of working with senior leaders, unless the top level really supports the change, even if everybody, it's better if everybody's in on the change together, because what we create, we support. But if the top leadership says, we want you to change the culture, we're not very transparent, we're kind of yes men, we appease a lot, and you come in to change that culture, the problem is going to be if the top senior leaders don't support that, you'll be enemy number one. So that's just kind of how that works. And you need to understand that, because if you don't understand that, you'll be hired to do something, but it won't be supported by the culture. So the three components is what I just said: the inner, the outer, and the culture. So you need to understand how those work together. So the inner game, I want to talk about that for a moment, because I have worked for a lifetime and dramatically on what I call my inner game. So inner game is your self-awareness, your personal integrity, your willingness to stretch. It is something only you can do. And I often say you can hire someone to clean your house, mow your yard, pay your bills, manage your team, but you cannot hire someone to do your inner game. What's going to make you stand out as a leader and as a human being is to consciously and continually work on your inner game. And this is one of the like core side um, um, pieces of this work is that there is no conflict unless there's an inner conflict first. And what that means is that anytime I have conflict with someone else, it will probably seem at first like it's them. They did something wrong, which they might have. You may have facts to support that. But when we have real conflict, we have to first resolve the inner conflict. Otherwise, our conversations will be full of anger, resentment, wanting to discipline, punish people in the wrong ways. So you've got to resolve your inner conflict first. In other words, let's say that you and I are struggling in something, and I feel that I need to talk with you, but I'm afraid to talk to you because you might yell or you might cry or you might go talk behind my back. I now have an inner conflict that's keeping me from moving forward because of the story I'm making up about you. So I have to resolve that and come together with you with a purpose of resolving versus a purpose to win. And so that's where inner work is really the key. Then there's the outer game, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, some of the skills that I teach in this book. And then there's the culture, which I just addressed. So, one of the inner game concepts that I want to talk about is what I call leadership identity. And I'm so interested in how identity shapes our behavior. Had read a really good book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy about it's called Personality is Not Permanent. It actually shifted some things for me in the way that I see myself. And so I talk about leadership identity from the perspective of creating an aligned identity. And I give you an outline of how to create an identity if you're wanting to work on your identity and elevate to the next level. And so an aligned leadership identity is where I see myself as a leader and you also see me as a leader. When we're misaligned in our identity, I might see myself as a leader, but if you don't, you're not going to be influenced by me. And if I don't see myself as a leader, but you do, we're going to struggle because you're going to lose respect because I'm not acting like a leader. And so often I see leaders promoted because of their good work ethic or because of their work product. And they don't have the inner and outer game to really be a leader because there's lack of clarity on where the boundaries start and stop. So that's a whole other conversation. And by the way, if there's anything I'm saying here that you want a free live stream on, just make those suggestions and I'll work to do that. But I do talk a lot about identity. And there's three identities I talk about in the book and I give examples on that I see all the time. The best friend identity, that's the person who gets promoted and they just want everybody to like them. So the best friend, the hero, and the hands off. And the hero likes to fix problems and they feel like no one can do it like them. And then hands off, that can be a more senior level or a more seasoned leader that says, look, I'm not going to micromanage, I'm hands off. But hands off 100% generally leads to a lack of accountability. So those are some of the concepts on the inner game of leadership identity. I'm going to check in real quick and we're going to come back with another inner game concept, which is emotional integrity. And hope that I'm not talking too fast. I know I'm a fast talker. Just check in to see who's here. Hi, Shannon. Another person from Missouri. Richard. How has the newer diversity philosophy affected your approach to teaching? I'm not sure I understand the question, really. Um, I'm not sure I understand the question. I know there's a lot out there about inclusion, diversity. My work is really based on if you are living by, I guess, the golden rule and by your higher principles, you're going to naturally be that person that embraces inclusion and diversity. You're going to naturally be that. So I'm looking at every human being as a responsible human being that has empowerment. And so I'm looking at things from that perspective. I think one of the worst things we can do is to view other people as a victim. I think there's a lot of brilliant people, and we need to find their brilliance and help them in that way and be supportive, but not a rescuer. So I hope that answers some of your question. It's probably too big of a question for today. Love to talk with you about that offline, perhaps sometimes. But mine is about empowerment. It's about responsibility, accountability, personal growth, the inner game structures. So that's really the work I'm doing is about those concepts. And so um, another I'll show you this real quick regarding leadership identity. This is what I know. We all behave in alignment with how we see ourselves. So if I see myself as disempowered, that's how I'm going to behave and I'm going to look for evidence. If I see myself as not included, I won't see myself as one who can initiate inclusivity. So I want to see myself as the best possible leader with all these new concepts that we needed to wake up. I want to see myself as open to other people's experience. And if there's something I need to change, willing to do that. So the way that we see ourselves drives our behavior. And if we identify too fully with any kind of political orientation, or if we just identify with only I'm a woman, or I'm this, I'm Republican, I'm Democrat, I'm young, whatever we identify with is eventually going to hurt us. So we want to expand our identity to be a more about values, like identify with our values. So really talk a lot about living by your values so that you're living a principle-based life. And so leadership identity, best friend, hero, hands off. And then the second, and not really the second, it's one of the internal games that I talk about, is emotional integrity. This is something I've really worked on a lot, is to have emotional integrity. And you can have emotional awareness and you can have emotional intelligence. You can be really aware of how you feel, how energy processes through your body, but you may keep that from other people because you're afraid of looking weak or because you don't want to hand over your cards. So I'm putting this philosophy in here about emotional integrity, and I'm going to show you that. And emotional integrity, the way that I'm talking about it, is you take ownership of your experiences. Now, I'm going to tell you that is one of the hardest things you will ever do. This keeps you out of the blame game that someone else is 100% responsible for your experience. You take ownership, even if someone did something. You face your dark side. This is the hard part. And then you represent yourself. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is every single one of us has a shadow side, the part of me that I don't like, whatever it is, whether it's jealousy, whether it's too much anger, whether it's jumping to conclusions, whether it's a narrative, and you can't control the negative narrative. We all have that stuff. So to pretend that there's people that don't have it and is fully accomplished is beyond ridiculous. We all have these issues and we're all elevating and we're growing. And so emotional integrity is to face that humanity, to say every single one of us has biases, every single one of us has opinions, every single one of us has blind spots. That's the reality. And if I can face those, I can grow. And if I represent myself, I'm in emotional integrity. So it's okay to say, you know what, that triggered me. Or guess what? I'm frustrated right now in this conversation. So why don't we give a break? Just owning it versus everybody else thinks this about you. I just posted on my LinkedIn newsletter an article about stop playing power of attorney. What I mean by that is quit getting drawn in to when other people say you need to hear what everybody thinks about X, Y, and Z. As a leader, you need to say, but what do you think about X, Y, and Z? No, I'm representing the group. How about representing yourself? And instead of me saying, well, everybody thinks we should change the schedule, everybody thinks this hybrid work, not everybody, what I think. And if everybody is in on the conversation, invite everybody into the room. That's where we're going to clear up a whole lot of misunderstandings by just being completely in integrity with our own emotions and with our own desires. And that's a hard thing to ask for, it seems like, in today's world. So emotional integrity is another one of the skills. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the outer game concepts. And one of those is what I call resistance training, working with high conflict people. I've done some LinkedIn learning down in Santa Barbara. Uh, and so for the LinkedIn learning, if you're a member of that, you can look for some of my working with high conflict people information. And really, part of it, like I had a person that it was a guy, a man who said, this actually changed my life. And I said, more and more. I always want to know, what is it that you got? Like, I love when people have a breakthrough. He said, I'm going to do the one thing that I can do, which is to stop calling people names, stop labeling people even behind their back. So in other words, I'm going to be respectful, because I honestly say that it's not disagreement that causes the problem, it's disrespect. That is our problem. If we can respect other people, their opinions, and stop calling them names like narcissist or completely crazy, if we can stop that, then we stop the narrative about how we see other people and we open to curiosity so we can really get to know them. And so there's a section on what to do when you're working with a lot of resistance. And I talk about three kinds of resistance. So if you're interested in that specifically, I did a LinkedIn live, a live stream in office hours like I'm doing now. And you can go to my YouTube channel at YouTube.com/ Marlene Chism. And I keep all my LinkedIn lives there just for the sake of keeping them in one place. I'm not trying to build the channel. I'm not trying to go live, or, with YouTube or anything like that. It's just a place for me to organize these files. So if you want that, that's there. You can use these in your team meetings or whatever. And so finally, as I said, one of the outer skills that is a blueprint for difficult conversations. Originally, I wanted the entire book to be about that. But what I have found in this work that I do is that we need, if we've allowed a problem to go on for so long, we need a format, a framework. Now, it's a framework, it's not a script. It's a framework of knowing where you are in the conversation, and each one of the skills stand alone. My goal with this for people is that it gives them a place to start. It helps them clear their emotional integrity so they can be on the right page to deal with someone. And it also gives you skills that in the moment, once you've done this once, you should be able to use these skills without having to have a big, long, drawn out conversation every time there's a little problem. For example, let's say that you've had an employee that has been folding their arms and rolling their eyes at meetings, and it's gotten so bad, the interruptions, the bullying, whatever's going on, that you now have to have a conversation. You have the conversation, you use the blueprint, but the next time, because now you've set the stage of expectations, you say something like, Mike, I've noticed that your arms are crossed, do you disagree? And you just hold that space. And once you learn how to use these tools and you're ready for the response, you can actually start to have really intelligent conversations, help shift behavior, give people the awareness they need to be a better worker. And so this is about coaching and support, not so much about discipline. It's more about giving people the skills and the support they need to improve their performance. I'm going to check in one last time, and I'm going to give you the bigger view of how to use the book, because I see some comments have come in. Oh, thank you, Kim. Thank you. It's very helpful for me to know that, because this feels like a lecture sometimes. So Jennifer, what's your channel again? Okay, it's YouTube. If you just go to YouTube plus Marlene Chism, you'll find it. And I'll post this later in the comment box, but it's YouTube.com/ my name, Marlene Chism, and you'll find all my videos that I've done for a year. I set out to do these videos and do it. I was horrible at first. I was slow. I repeated myself. I kept losing connection, and I just decided be uncomfortable, make it happen. I consciously wanted to build brand loyalty with an audience to share my content, and it's free. So anyway, hi Addie, hi Bonnie, LinkedIn user from Maine. Hey Gerald, friend of mine. Good to see you again. Okay, just checking in. And sorry, I've connected a couple of people twice. But Denise, hi. Yes, thank you so much. Denise put that in the chat. So there's my YouTube channel. And you can join it. I mean, it doesn't matter. Sometimes I'll tell you, whenever I listen to podcasts all the time. And if I find something that's great on neuroscience or identity or health, I just curate this content so that people that like my work are going to like these other people too. There's plenty to go around this world. We need to share good resources. So that's what I do there. So finally, here's the bigger view. This book, today is the launch. If you haven't gotten it, I'd love for you to get it today. I would love for you, if you found value in this today, even just value in the overview, and picked up a couple of tips, if you wouldn't mind sharing the tips and then sharing this sharing this video on your own timeline today. Today's launch day, so I'm trying to get as many people as possible to know about the work. And this book, I want to say this was developed for book clubs. So here's what that means. There's a facilitation guide at the very back of the book. But if you're like me, I like to write in my books, so I don't care if you write in my book. I like to write in my books, but if I was doing a book club, I would want more than just this book. I would want a one sheet. So I had the publisher agree to let me offer that. So you can go to my website at marlenechism.com. You can go to the website and you can enter your name. It does put you on my email list. I don't bombard. I just try to give value. Like every Monday, um, you'll get an email like an e-zine. I call it e-zine, old fashioned. But if you'll do that, you'll get a downloadable learning guide that you can print off and give to members of your group that's having a book club. If you're the type, if you're like me and you like to do deep reading and reflection, in the book at every chapter, there's 4 questions for reflection so that you can really absorb it and apply it. Because what I have learned about skills development is that you could pass a test on anyone's content and say, I get it. I totally get their stuff. I've had that book. I've read it. But the truth of it is in the living of it. And you can't do that without reflection and without trying things and seeing what sticks and what doesn't, kind of finding your own way. And I also say that if there's another thought leader that you enjoy and it sort of conflicts with what I say, just pick what works for you. Like, I don't need anyone to be attached and to have the argument about which way is right. For example, responsibility versus accountability, the way that I explain it. I do that because what's important, it's how we organize information, not who's right about it. So pick something that works for you that helps you change your leadership the way that you want to. So there's that short learning guide you can get for Lunch and Learns, or there's the longer guide, and they're both on the same document that you can get. So again, if you like this, share this on your timeline. Last time I think I got 13 shares, so it was awesome. And get the book today. If you're getting bulk books, you can go to Porchlight Books and you can get great discounts. If you're international and you want the book and you don't know how to find it, I've got a link. Just let me know. I can send that to you. Follow me on LinkedIn if you want reminders about things that I'm doing like this. I try to do one a month. I've never missed except for when there was a technical glitch. And then I redid it a few weeks later. So follow me on LinkedIn and thank you so much. I know that you could have been anywhere else today, and I'm just honored that you support my work and for you being here. So thank you so much.